An old man who collected trash on the streets found several important documents. Despite his difficult situation, he decided to return them. But when he found the owner, he didn't expect what would happen. Hudson, at 55, looked much older. The hard life on the streets had left its mark on his face, and past mistakes had changed his life. He had lost everything: his house, his job, and what hurt the most, his relationship with his children. "Oh, if only I could go back," he would say to himself, remembering the moments when he made wrong choices. Those mistakes had pushed him away from his family, and now he lived alone, picking up trash on the streets. Even so, Hudson refused to let sadness take over. Every day he woke up before the sun, stretched with difficulty, and put on his old hat. "Today's going to be a good day," he would say out loud, trying to cheer himself up as he pushed his cart. He walked through the city streets, collecting whatever he found: bottles, papers, plastics. Everything had value, and that's how he made his small income. Sometimes he would stop to rest, looking up at the sky. "I know one day all this will pass. I'll get my life back. I'll earn my children's forgiveness," he whispered, as if the wind could carry his words to them. Hudson didn't know if his children still thought about him, but he thought of them every single day. The dream of seeing them again was what kept him going. As he walked through the streets, he greeted everyone who passed by. "Good morning, ma'am. God bless your way," he'd say with a smile, even when he received a look of disdain. Others, however, would stop to chat. "Do you still believe things will get better?" a shopkeeper once asked, seeing the old man's daily struggle. Hudson, with hopeful eyes, replied, "Always. Life knocked me down, but it won't keep me down forever. I know I'll rise again one day." Even in poverty, Hudson didn't hold on to bitterness. It was a morning like any other. Hudson was pushing his old cart through the streets, used to the routine of collecting recyclables. The sun was still shy in the sky, and the sidewalks were almost empty. He stopped here and there, picking up cans, bits of cardboard, plastic bottles. As he turned a quieter corner, something caught his attention. Amid a pile of discarded boxes, he saw something different: a leather portfolio, old but still in good condition. Hudson bent down carefully and picked it up, feeling the weight of the object in his hands. "What could this be?" he muttered to himself, curious. He opened the portfolio gently, like he was handling something precious. Inside, he found a stack of papers, all with letters and stamps that looked important. Hudson, who wasn't much of a reader, tried hard to understand what he was looking at. After a while, he realized they were property deeds. "Property deeds," he whispered, confused. "This must be worth a lot." He looked around, as if expecting someone to appear and claim it, but there was no one. He didn't understand exactly what each paper said, but he had heard of property deeds before. "This must be worth a fortune," he thought, running his finger over the old leather. His mind filled with quick thoughts. "With this, I could change my life, pay my debts, maybe even rent a little room," he whispered, but then shook his head. Something inside him told him this wasn't right. He looked at the portfolio again and took a deep breath. "It's not mine. I can't do this. I won't fall into that temptation." Hudson always held on to one thing, even with all his mistakes: his honesty. "I might be poor, but I'm not a thief," he said out loud, as if he needed to remind himself. With the portfolio under his arm, he started walking, determined. "I'm going to find the owner of these documents and return them. Whoever lost this must be desperate," he thought. Deep down, he knew finding the owner wouldn't be easy, but that didn't matter. What mattered was doing the right thing. Hudson asked around here and there until someone pointed him to a big house at the top of the city. "That mansion up there? It must belong to a very rich man," he thought, looking at the huge iron gate. Next to it, a sign had the name Nolan written on it. He didn't know who Nolan was, but that name was on the documents, and he was sure they belonged to him. With his heart pounding, Hudson rang the bell. He waited a few seconds, and a man in a suit opened the gate. "What do you want?" the servant asked, looking Hudson up and down suspiciously. Hudson took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I found this on the street. I think it belongs to the owner of this house." "These are important documents, I just want to return them," he said, showing the portfolio. The man looked at the portfolio and, without saying anything else, signaled for Hudson to come in. He led him through a huge garden, full of flowers Hudson had never seen up close, until they reached the mansion's door. Inside, everything was shiny, and the floor echoed with every step. Soon Nolan appeared, a tall man with a serious and imposing look. He stopped in front of Hudson and looked at the portfolio. "What's this? Where did you get it?" he asked, crossing his arms. Hudson adjusted himself, holding the portfolio with both hands. "I found it thrown on the street. From what I saw, they're deeds. I think they're yours," he said, extending the portfolio to Nolan. The millionaire took the portfolio with some surprise, checking the documents to see if everything was there. He raised his eyes and stared at Hudson for a moment. "And what do you want with this?" Nolan asked directly, his expression still suspicious. Hudson scratched his head and shrugged. "I don't understand, but I don't want anything, sir. I'm just a trash collector. I found these papers and thought the right thing to do was return them. They're not mine, so I don't want anything. So I'm just doing what I think is right." Nolan looked at Hudson with an expression that was a mix of surprise and suspicion. "You found these deeds on the street and just came to return them?" he asked, crossing his arms and narrowing his eyes, as if trying to see beyond the words. Hudson, with a steady gaze, took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, sir. I thought it was the right thing to do," he said, his voice calm but full of sincerity. He nervously rubbed his hands, not knowing exactly how to continue. Nolan kept looking at Hudson, trying to figure him out. "No one does anything for free these days. What do you want in return for this?" he asked, his voice full of doubt. Hudson shook his head quickly. "I don't want anything, sir. Truly. I'm a simple man. Collecting trash is how I make a living. But even though I don't have much, I have my honesty. These papers aren't mine. They never would be. It wouldn't be right for me to keep them." For a moment, Nolan seemed confused. It was as if he was used to dealing with people who always wanted something in return. "You could have sold this, you know that, right?" he insisted, still skeptical. Hudson let out a small sigh but kept his gaze firm. "I know, sir. But what good would dirty money be? I may be poor, but I'd rather sleep peacefully, knowing I did the right thing." Nolan stayed silent, watching this simple man who spoke with so much conviction. It seemed he wasn't used to this kind of honesty. Hudson, noticing the doubt on Nolan's face, took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "Sir, as I said, I don't want anything except to return what's not mine." He held his cap in his hands, nervous, but continued to speak with sincerity. "I'm a poor man, it's true. I live off what I find on the street, but one thing I have is my honesty. No matter how much I need it, these deeds aren't mine. They never would be." Nolan looked at him seriously, as if he was still processing what he had just heard. "But you don't want anything?" he asked once more, almost in disbelief. Hudson shook his head slowly. "Nothing, sir. I'm just returning what belongs to you." He looked up directly at Nolan and added, "At the end of the day, that's what matters most to me." Nolan stood still for a few moments, unsure of what to say. He was used to dealing with people who always wanted something in return, but there in front of him was Hudson, a simple man who only wanted to do the right thing. "You're a rare man, you know that," Nolan finally said, with a look of surprise on his face. "Very few would return something so valuable without expecting anything in return." Hudson shrugged, not knowing how to react. "I just did what anyone should do, sir." Nolan looked at the portfolio in his hands, then at Hudson. He realized this man was being genuine, and the least he could do was help someone so honest. "Tell me something, Hudson. How are you living? Where do you stay?" Hudson smiled awkwardly. "I live on the streets, sir. I go out every day to collect what I can and sell the material to make some money. It's not easy, but it's what I have." Nolan, touched by Hudson's simplicity and honesty, thought for a moment and then said, "I want to help you. A man like you deserves more than this. Do you have anywhere to stay tonight?" Hudson, surprised by the question, shook his head. "No, sir, but I get by. I always do." Nolan waved his hand, as if not wanting to hear any excuses. "None of that. You're staying here at my house tonight, and you're going to have a good meal too." We'll sort this out." Hudson widened his eyes, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Sir, you don't need to. I don't want to be a bother. It's no bother at all," Nolan said firmly. "I insist. You're an honest man and I want to repay you in some way." Hudson's eyes grew wide with surprise. "Sir, I can't accept this. I don't want to be a burden. I've done what I had to do. I returned what was yours." Nolan gave a slight smile and replied firmly, "You're not a burden. Quite the opposite. You've done more than most people would, and I won't take no for an answer. An honest man like you deserves a real rest. Now come, let's eat. Don't worry about anything else today." Hudson looked down at his hands, not knowing what to say. He lived off scraps with small meals that barely filled his stomach, and the thought of a proper meal and a comfortable bed seemed too far-fetched for him to accept right away. I don't know what to say, sir," Hudson said, his voice almost failing. "I'm not used to such kindness." Nolan placed a comforting hand on Hudson's shoulder. "You don't need to say anything. Just accept it. We'll take care of you tonight." Hudson, with tears welling up in his eyes, took a deep breath. "All right. I accept, sir. Thank you. Truly." Nolan smiled, pleased with the answer. "Then come. The table is being prepared. Tonight you'll eat as you deserve." Hudson followed Nolan to the large dining room, still in disbelief that, for one night, his reality would change completely. Hudson, still in disbelief at what was happening, followed Nolan through the mansion. The lights, the luxurious furniture, everything felt like another world to him. During dinner, he was served a dish he had never seen in his life. "No need to be shy, Hudson. Today you're my guest. Eat as much as you like," said Nolan with a friendly smile. Hudson carefully picked up the cutlery, his hands trembling slightly with emotion. He took the first bite and his eyes nearly closed with joy. "This is too good, sir. It's been so long since I've eaten something like this," he said, his voice barely audible. Nolan watched in silence, feeling he had done the right thing. So after dinner, one of the house staff led Hudson to a spacious room with a huge, soft bed. Hudson stopped at the door, feeling a bit awkward, looking around at everything. "Is this really for me?" he asked, almost as if he didn't believe it. The staff member smiled. "Yes, it is. Make yourself at home." "Make yourself at—" Hudson entered slowly, as if afraid to break something. He took off his worn shoes, sat on the edge of the bed, and ran his hands over the soft sheets. "My God, I never thought I'd sleep in a place like this." He lay down, still feeling a bit lost in the comfort, and soon the exhaustion overtook him. For the first time in a long time, Hudson slept deeply, without worrying about the cold, the noise of the streets, or the fear of what the next day would bring. That night he felt safe, protected, and tears of gratitude rolled down his face as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Hudson woke up slowly, feeling the comfort of the bed as if it were a dream. He got up carefully, still a bit in disbelief that he was there. When he went downstairs, he found Nolan waiting in the living room having a coffee. When Nolan saw Hudson, he smiled. "Good morning, Hudson. I hope you slept well," said Nolan with a welcoming voice. Hudson, still a little shy, replied, "I slept better than ever, sir. Thank you so much for all of this. So much for—" "I don't know how to thank you." Nolan took a sip of his coffee, thoughtful, then looked directly at Hudson. "I've been thinking. You did something few people would do, and I want to help you more than just with a meal and a bed for one night." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Tell me, Hudson, what do you truly wish for? If you could ask for anything, what would it be?" Hudson stayed silent for a moment. He had never thought about having the right to ask someone for something, especially from such a wealthy man. He looked at the floor, scratched his head, and took a deep breath. "Sir, I don't really know how to say this, but what I wish for the most is to find my family again. I made a lot of mistakes, and because of that, I've drifted away from my children. If I could, I'd just want a chance to have them back in my life." Nolan listened carefully, his eyes full of understanding. "Family is important, Hudson, much more than money or anything else. And why do you think they wouldn't take you back?" Hudson sighed heavily. "I don't know, sir. It's been a long time since I've been on the streets living the way I do. I think they're ashamed of me. But I've changed, and what I want most is to show them that. If I could have a place to stay, an honest job, maybe they would forgive me." Nolan looked at Hudson with a mixture of compassion and admiration. He saw in the man's eyes the weight of longing and the genuine desire to fix what had been broken. "So that's what you want? To get your family back and have a place to call home?" Nolan asked, wanting to be sure. Hudson nodded slowly, his eyes filling with tears. "Yes, sir. That's all I ask. A place to start over, so I can be someone my kids can be proud of." Nolan stayed silent for a few seconds, clearly moved by Hudson's words. He saw the sincerity in the man's eyes, a deep desire to fix the mistakes of the past. It touched him in a way he hadn't expected. Taking a deep breath, Nolan stepped forward and spoke in a softer yet firm tone. "Hudson, I know life isn't always fair, and I understand how hard it must be to carry this weight, but I want to give you an opportunity." Hudson looked up, surprised, not fully understanding what Nolan meant. "You said you need a home, a chance to start again, right? Well, I have this huge mansion here, and I've always needed someone trustworthy to take care of it. How about you stay here with me, as the caretaker?" Hudson stood there, speechless. He blinked a few times as if trying to process what he had just heard. "What, sir? Me? Work here? Live here in the mansion?" Nolan smiled, nodding. "Yes, exactly. I know you're an honest man, and after everything you did, returning those deeds without asking for anything in return, I can't think of anyone more deserving of this chance. You would have a place to live, food on the table, and above all, time to reconnect with your family." Hudson's eyes filled with tears. He tried to speak, but the words didn't come out right away. "Sir, I don't know what to say. This is far more than I ever dreamed of." "I accept, of course I accept. I don't know how to thank you." Nolan placed a hand on Hudson's shoulder and smiled. "You don't need to thank me. You deserve this opportunity. Now, let's get everything sorted. From today, this house is also yours." Hudson was completely stunned by Nolan's offer. It was as if the world had stopped for a moment, and he couldn't believe what he had just heard. His eyes filled with tears, but he quickly tried to hide them, wiping his worn face with his hands. "Sir, you're really offering me a place to live, a chance to work here in your mansion?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Nolan smiled patiently, as if he were speaking to an old friend. "Yes, Hudson. I'm offering you this chance. You deserve a fresh start, and this house is far too big for me to manage alone. Besides, an honest man like you is exactly the kind of person I want around." Hudson ran a hand through his thinning hair, still in disbelief. He looked around as if expecting to wake up from this dream. "Sir, I don't even know what to say. I never imagined someone like me could get a chance like this. All I've known is the street. Living here feels like a dream too far away." Nolan moved closer with a calm look and said, "You don't need to thank me, Hudson. You deserve this. I know life has been hard, but now it's time for a new beginning. If you want it, this house is yours too." Hudson finally let the tears fall. "I accept, sir. I accept with all my heart. I'll never forget this. I promise I'll do my best every day. Thank you, truly." Nolan gave a gentle smile, satisfied with Hudson's decision. Then it settled. "Welcome to your new home, Hudson." As the days passed, Nolan and Hudson began to grow closer in a way neither of them expected. Nolan, who once seemed distant and serious, became a very friendly figure to Hudson. He didn't treat Hudson like just another employee, but as someone he could talk to, share ideas with, and even laugh at the simple things in life. In the mornings, Nolan made sure to have breakfast with Hudson in the mansion's large kitchen. "How's the work in the garden going?" Nolan would ask with a light smile. Hudson, always humble, would reply, "It's going well, sir. I'm learning a lot from the staff here. I didn't know I had such a knack for taking care of plants." He'd give a shy laugh, and Nolan would join in, amused by Hudson's simplicity and sincerity. Many afternoons when work was quieter, the two would sit in the garden to chat. Hudson would tell stories of his life on the streets, the difficulties he had faced, and Nolan would listen attentively, without judgment, just understanding the man before him. "You know, Hudson," Nolan said during one of these conversations, "I learn more from you than you realize. Your strength and honesty are admirable." Hudson was surprised. "Oh, sir, I just did what was right, but hearing that from you, it means a lot to me." Nolan shook his head, smiling. "And that's why you deserve to be here, to have this new chance, and please, I've told you, just call me Nolan." Hudson laughed, a little awkwardly. "Sorry, sir. I mean, Nolan. It's just hard to get used to so much kindness." Nolan chuckled. "You'll get used to it, Hudson. And who knows, maybe this mansion will also become the home you've always wanted." Over time, their relationship grew. Nolan wasn't just a boss to Hudson, but someone he could rely on. Slowly, Hudson felt that he was no longer alone in the world, and that he had found more than just a place to live. He had found a friend. Nolan didn't stop at just offering Hudson a roof and a bed. He wanted to ensure that Hudson had a dignified life in every way. "Hudson," Nolan said one morning during breakfast, "it's not just about living here. I want you to have a full life. We'll take care of everything: education, health, work. I want you to have what you need to truly start over." Hudson, surprised by such generosity, tried to decline. "Sir, I'm already more than grateful for everything you've done for me. I don't want to take advantage." Nolan raised his hand with a smile. "You're not taking advantage of anything, Hudson. You deserve this chance. From today on, we'll take care of every detail." The next day, Nolan made sure to take Hudson to the doctor for a full checkup. "We need to make sure your health is in order. No more neglecting it," Nolan said firmly, but with his usual friendly tone. Hudson, who hadn't seen a doctor in years, felt a bit embarrassed but grateful. "I've never had anyone take care of me like this. I don't even know how to thank you, sir. You already do that with your work and your friendship, Hudson. Now it's time to take care of you." Besides health, Nolan insisted that Hudson also pursue his education. "Do you read well?" Nolan asked one day while flipping through a book. Hudson lowered his eyes, a little shy. "I know the basics, sir, but I've never been very good at it. School was something I left behind early." Nolan smiled. "Then let's fix that. I'll enroll you in some classes. It's not just to work better. It's for you to feel more confident, to learn more about the world." Hudson was touched. I never thought anyone would care about me like this. I always thought it was too late to learn. But if you believe in me, I'll try." "There's no such thing as too late, Hudson. You've got your whole life ahead of you, and I'll support you in whatever you need." Over time, Nolan made sure Hudson had good working conditions. He organized schedules so that Hudson wouldn't be overworked, and even hired more people to help with the heavier tasks. Hudson, moved, once said, "I've never had a boss who cared like this. I've always been treated as if I didn't matter." Nolan responded with a calm smile. "Here, you're not just an employee, Hudson. You're part of my home, and I want you to have everything you need. Life can be tough, but with support and care, we can make things better." As time passed, Hudson began to excel at his work in ways he never imagined. He dedicated himself to the mansion with care and attention, always doing his best. Every plant in the garden, every detail in the house, he tended to as if it were his own home. Nolan, watching closely, saw that Hudson was much more than just a caretaker. He was someone who put his heart into everything he did. One day, as they were walking through the garden, Nolan remarked, "Hudson, you're doing an incredible job. The house has never been so well cared for. You have a real gift for this." Hudson, with a shy smile, replied, "Thank you, sir. I just do what I think needs to be done. This house gave me a new chance, and I take care of it like it's my own." Nolan smiled, nodding, "And that's why you're standing out so much. You put your soul into everything you do." The relationship between the two grew stronger. It wasn't just a boss and employee, it was a friendship that deepened each day. Nolan made sure to have lunch with Hudson whenever he could, and their conversations became moments of sharing. Hudson spoke more about his life, and Nolan, in turn, talked about the challenges of running his business and dealing with the wealthy world. Despite coming from such different backgrounds, they understood each other. "I've never had a relationship like this with anyone, sir. I was always treated as if I were less just because I lived on the street," Hudson once said during one of these conversations. Nolan looked at him seriously. "Hudson, I don't see any difference between us. You're just as valuable as anyone else. And if there's one thing I've learned from you, it's that honesty and character are priceless. You've taught me that." Hudson was moved by the words. "I never thought anyone would say that to me. I just did what I thought was right. But hearing it from you, it gives me the strength to keep going." With time, Hudson also began to help Nolan with other aspects of the house, offering suggestions on how to improve things, always with humility, but showing that he had much to offer. Nolan trusted Hudson more and more, knowing that he was an honest and hard-working man. Over time, the friendship between Nolan and Hudson grew so strong that they started thinking about how they could help others. Nolan knew that Hudson had lived through tough years on the streets, and the stories he shared always made Nolan reflect. One day during breakfast, Nolan looked at Hudson and said, "You know, Hudson, I've been thinking a lot about how we can do more for people who are in the same situation you were, those who are on the streets with no hope, and I think you can help me with that." Hudson stopped, surprised. "Sir, help how? What could I do?" Nolan smiled. "You've been through it. You know what these people are facing. Who better to understand their needs than someone who's been there? I've been thinking of creating a foundation to help the most vulnerable, and I'd like you to be part of it. In fact, I'd like it to carry your name." Hudson was speechless. "My name, sir? I don't even know what to say, but how would it work?" Nolan, full of excitement, began to explain. "We'll create a space, a shelter, where people on the streets can find support. A place where they can get food, clothes, medical care, and even job opportunities. The Hudson Foundation could do that. And with you by my side, I know it will succeed." Hudson took a deep breath, moved. "I never thought something like this could happen. To see my name on a foundation, helping people like I used to be, it would be the greatest honor of my life." Nolan put a hand on Hudson's shoulder. "And it will be an honor for me to have you as a partner in this. Together, we can make a difference." In the following months, they worked side by side to bring the project to life. Hudson, with his life experience, knew exactly what people on the streets needed. He talked to other homeless people, listened to their stories, and with that, helped build the foundation's core. Nolan handled the financial and legal aspects, but he made sure Hudson was involved in every detail. When the Hudson Foundation was finally opened, the emotion on Hudson's face was indescribable. "I never imagined my life could change so much. If someone had told me that one day I'd be helping others, I wouldn't have believed it," he said, his eyes shining. Nolan, standing beside him, added, "And this is just the first of many changes we're going to make. We're only getting started, Hudson." As the months passed, the Hudson Foundation began to grow in ways no one expected. Not only did homeless adults seek help, but children and teenagers living in the same difficult conditions also came. The foundation became a place where they could feel safe, learn, eat, and even dream of a better future. Hudson made sure he was always present, getting to know each person who came through the doors. He talked to the young people, listened to their stories, and offered words of encouragement. "I've been in your shoes," he would often say. "I know life feels tough right now, but don't give up. There's always a chance to start over, and here you're not alone." The children adored him. With his simple ways and big heart, Hudson became like a grandfather to many of them. And for the teenagers, he was proof that it was possible to turn your life around, no matter how hard it had been. Over time, the foundation's work started attracting attention in the city. The local media began talking about the work they were doing, and Hudson's story, the former trash collector who was now helping hundreds of people, touched many hearts. And that's how, without him knowing, the news reached his children. Hudson's children, who had distanced themselves from him for so long, started hearing about the foundation that carried their father's name. At first, they didn't believe it. "Dad?" one of the children said, confused. "He started a foundation? He's helping other people. Intrigued, they decided to investigate for themselves. Without warning, one day they showed up at the foundation. Hudson, who was in the courtyard helping serve food to the children, could hardly believe it when he saw his children standing there, watching him from a distance. His heart raced, his hands trembled, and he didn't know what to do. One of the children, the eldest, took the first step and approached. "Dad?" he called, his voice filled with emotion. Hudson stopped, the plate of food nearly falling from his hands. He looked at his son with tearful eyes and replied, his voice shaking, "Son, you're here." The children slowly came closer, all with expressions of surprise and emotion. They didn't know exactly what to say, but seeing their father helping so many people changed something inside them. "Is it true then? Have you changed?" the youngest son asked, his voice a mix of pain and hope. Hudson, now with tears streaming down his face, said, "I have changed. I made so many mistakes in the past, but now I want to do things right. The foundation, it's my way of trying to make up for all I did wrong. And if I could, I'd give anything to have you back in my life." The children stayed silent for a moment, processing everything. Then the eldest stepped forward, his eyes wet with tears, and said, "Dad, maybe we can try again." At that moment, Hudson knew the foundation hadn't just changed the lives of strangers, it had finally brought his family back. After that emotional reunion, Hudson's children decided to reconnect with their father. They realized the man standing before them was very different from the one they knew in the past. Hudson was no longer the man lost in his mistakes and addictions. He had changed, and that change deeply touched each of them. In the days that followed, the children started visiting the foundation more often. At first, the conversations were shy and filled with caution, but slowly the atmosphere of distrust gave way to moments of laughter and stories from the past. Hudson, who had dreamed of this moment for so long, couldn't contain his joy. He saw his children coming closer, wanting to be part of his life again, and for him that was the greatest gift he could ever receive. "Dad, I never thought I'd see you like this," the eldest son said one afternoon as they watched the children playing at the foundation. "The man you are now makes me so proud." Hudson, his eyes full of tears, smiled. "All I ever wanted was a chance to make things right. And now that you're here, it feels like my life is complete." Seeing their father's dedication and Nolan's commitment to the foundation, the children also decided to get involved. They started supporting Nolan's cause, actively participating in the philanthropic work. Each one, with their own skills, contributed in unique ways. The eldest son, who worked in accounting, helped organize the foundation's finances, ensuring more resources went towards helping people. The youngest son, passionate about sports, began organizing activities for the foundation's children, giving them an opportunity to have fun and learn important values like teamwork and discipline. In no time, the relationship between Hudson and his children transformed. It was no longer just a relationship of forgiveness and reconciliation, but a deep partnership. They worked together, not only as a family, but as a team dedicated to changing lives. Nolan, always by Hudson's side, was impressed by what was happening. "Hudson, your children are amazing. They have the same generous heart as you. Together, you're making a huge difference." Hudson, moved, replied, "I could never have imagined this, Nolan. I spent so much time away from them, but now with this opportunity, I feel like we can do good together." The foundation continued to grow, impacting even more lives. The union of Hudson, his children, and Nolan turned the foundation into something much bigger. Together, they helped children return to school, teenagers find a path away from the streets, and many families get a second chance. The relationship between Hudson and his children strengthened each day. They finally saw themselves as a real family, united by a greater purpose. Working side by side, they transformed many lives, and in doing so, they healed the wounds of the past. Hudson, who once thought he would never be forgiven by his children, now looked at them with a heart full of gratitude. "You've given me a new life," he often said. And his children, smiling, always replied, You're the one who taught us what really matters." Hudson was sitting in the garden of the foundation, watching the children running and playing, feeling the sun on his face. It was one of those moments where he allowed himself to stop and think about everything that had happened. He looked around, seeing his children talking with Nolan and helping with the foundation's activities, and his heart filled with gratitude. For a moment, all the memories came flooding back. The hard years on the streets, the weight of loneliness, the mistakes that had distanced him from his family. He thought about the cold nights when hope seemed like a flame about to go out, and the guilt he carried for losing contact with his children. Hudson had always believed he would never have the chance to start over, to be forgiven. Now, seeing his children close by, working alongside him, he couldn't hold back his emotions. Tears started rolling down his face, but this time they were tears of joy. He stood up, wiping his face with his hand, but the tears kept coming. Hudson looked up at the sky, as if thanking it for that moment, and whispered, "I did it. I finally did it." One of his sons, noticing his father's emotion, approached him and asked gently, "Dad, are you all right?" Hudson, with his heart full of happiness, replied, "I'm more than all right, son. I never thought I'd live to see this. You've forgiven me, and that's all I needed." The son, touched by his father's sincerity, put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Dad, you've changed, you've earned it. We're proud of who you've become. Everything that happened, it's in the past." Hudson couldn't hold back and hugged his son tightly, as if trying to make up for all the years they had been apart. The other children, seeing this, also came closer, and they all stood there, united in a hug that symbolized forgiveness, love, and a new beginning. "I've waited so long for this moment," Hudson said, the words coming out through his tears. "I don't even know how to thank you for giving me this chance." The eldest son smiled and replied, "You don't need to thank us, Dad. We've changed too, and now we're together, and that's what matters." Hudson, still crying, felt the weight of years of regret lift off his shoulders. He had finally achieved what he wanted most, the forgiveness of his children and the chance to start over with them by his side. In that moment, he knew that life, with all its struggles, had given him a new chance to be happy. This story of Hudson teaches us that no matter how much we've messed up in the past, there's always a chance to start again. Honesty, hard work, and true repentance can guide us to a path of redemption. The most important thing is to never give up, because forgiveness and the chance to change can come when we least expect it. What did you think of Hudson's journey? Do you believe in second chances? Leave your comment, we'd love to hear your opinion. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring videos like this. Oh, and click here on the screen to watch our playlist of emotional stories or the next video we've prepared for you.